So we just talked about comparing decimals in the previous video. Now we're going to talk about how decimals and fractions are related, specifically with decimal fractions. So what we do with decimals and fractions this year in 4th grade, we'll do tenths and we'll do hundredths. So when you get to 5th grade, it'll get a little bit crazier. This year we just worry about tenths and hundredths. So if you can see this chart, and I'll scoot it down some. What we know about how fractions and decimals are related, we know that both a fraction and a decimal, they're a piece of a whole. So they are a part of some bigger whole. They can be represented a couple different ways. So our fraction, if it's 3/10, our fraction looks like 3/10. Let's see if I can get this closer. Oh, it's a little far away to see. If it's a fraction, it's 3/10. When we put it in decimal form, 0 wholes, because we don't have any holes here, and 3/10. If we model it, if this square was 1 whole, we have 3/10 of that whole. Then when we put it on a number line, going from 0 to 1, it is 3/10 of the way through. So if we look down at the next one, that was tenths. Now we'll look at hundredths. If we have 35 hundredths, this is what that looks like as a decimal. It's got 3/10 and 5 hundredths. So we've got our 3 groups of 10 and then 5 extra hundredths. When we model it, notice this, since we're dealing with hundredths, it's not broken into our 10 bars. Now it's broken into our hundreds cubes. So we have 3 full groups of 10 to be our 30, our 3/10, plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 extra hundredths. So this makes up 35 hundredths. Then when we look here on our number line, still 0 to 1, 35 hundredths, well, that's between 30 hundredths and 40 hundredths, halfway between. So that's where that would fall on the number line. So if something tells you to convert 68 hundredths into a decimal, you've got to think, are there any whole numbers out here? If there aren't, then your whole is a 0, and you put your decimal point. So we read this 68 hundredths, which means we write it, that's like there are 6 groups of 10, so there are 6/10, and then we have 8 hundredths towards our next tenth, our next group of 10. If we were given the decimal, this one's going to be tricky. You've got to really think about place value when you look at decimals like these. I know I have no holes, but if I come over here and write that like this, 7/10, I'm not correct, because this number is 7 hundredths. I have 0 tenths and 7 hundredths. So when we write decimal fractions, once you get the hang of it, it'll be super fast. You've just got to think and remember, ones like these will be the ones that get tricky. You've got to make sure you remember your place value.